Part of what's going on today in modern society. If you read my description on my channel, I delve into these topics. I give a bit of nuance. I give some description about it, of course. And I deal with the ultimate issues, the big-time issues, whether it's life, death, the afterlife, society in general, history, things that are, in the West anyway, considered somewhat taboo and sensitive topics. I don't care about their sensitivity. I talk about it anyway because truth matters. I told many people all throughout the world, and it seems like in those parts of the world they actually listen, whether it's anywhere in Asia, parts of Europe, Africa. And I say truth is the most valuable, well, how could I call it? The most valuable trait, the most valuable thing in the known universe, in the world, is truth. Absolute truth. There is absolute truth. But we live in this age of warm feelings, fake feelings, relativism. If it's just true for you, it's not true for me. That doesn't exist. In a subjective sense, it does. Like, okay, you like these toppings on your burger or your pizza or your ice cream. Okay, that's your so-called truth. But there are absolute truths. There is objective reality, objective truths that must be dealt with, that must be understood and apprehended by the mind, and also applied in daily living. But here in the West, and in particular, the USA, truth is of a relative nature. And that's one of the declines of a society. When a society starts to see truth as nothing more than just subjective opinion. You hear these slogans, these hollow platitudes that mean nothing. Well, if that's true for you, or that's just your opinion, all this kind of nonsense. The person who says that has nothing of substance to say. They have never thought about an issue critically that is of great importance in the world, in the dynamic of the world. And so it's easy. It's the fallback position of the lazy mind. The lazy mind is the one that has these empty, hollow platitudes and says, love is love, or science is real, nonsense, or that your truth is your truth, and it's not allowed to butt up against my truth. When there's only the truth, period, end of discussion. And that's the way the world, humanity has operated for ever since recorded history, or at least they've tried to. But it's only been, I would say, a recent phenomena where truth is, of course, under fire, the death of truth. But don't they understand that when you say such a thing, that truth doesn't exist, you're making an absolute truth statement. So you're making what's called a self-defeating statement. You're becoming an outlier to your own rule. So to say that truth doesn't exist is a false statement, because you're making an absolutist claim that truth does not exist. So by your mere pronouncement of such a statement that truth doesn't exist, you're making an absolute qualifier by definition. So you are basically appraising truth. You are elevating this idea of truth. And it all comes back to emotions. It's all about what satisfies your conscience and your mind. It's not really a matter of what is true. And that's the milieu of the society that we live in today. It's always the measure of a man or a woman, right, to be wise in their own thoughts when they can accept a truth that perhaps is unpalatable, that is unfavorable to their subjective senses. That's the measure of a really wise person, who can bend, who is pliable, who can accept a cold hard truth even though it stands against their subjective reasoning. That's the measure of a true person. And you rarely find somebody like that these days. Everybody wants to dig their heels in the most obstinate of ways, even in the face of evidence, in the face of facts, in the face of truth. And that's where we are. If you look at the last empires that collapsed, we can go all the way back to Babylon in around the 6th century BC to the Greco-Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, the Spanish, French colonial empire, the British, etc. And they all had this kind of fabric running through their society in terms of non-critical thinking, societal unrest, no real cohesion amongst the people. And this is to say nothing of the currency and the devaluation and the debasement of the currency and the economy. I'm not talking about the economy on this video, just about people's thinking. And there's always been a truth test, a philosophical truth test to determine if anything is true. It's not that hard, but it does take a bit of cognitive ability to try and determine what is true from what is false. In this age of so-called high technology, and everybody getting their information from a whole myriad of sources, whether it be from YouTube or some online news source, underground or mainstream, it doesn't matter. How do we determine these things as far as truth? And, well, from the philosophical approach, there's the correspondence and coherence theory of truth. And you can apply this to any and all claims regarding, say, religion, worldviews, social theory, etc. And it goes like this: for something to be correspondent to truth, it's something that has to match reality. It's something that has to match reality, and in a uniform way. That's number one, correspondence theory to truth. Number two, coherence theory to truth. It has to internally, structurally cohere. Now, I can't really, off the top of my head, give a syllogism. A syllogism, as you should know, is something that has a premise, a middle, and a conclusion, and it's dealing with the truth statement. So if I say, for example, this is regarding the coherence theory of truth, that's something that's internal. The correspondence is external, but the internal is this. So say, for example, I say, I have a dog. My dog can speak any language in the world. That's not right, doganese, right? No barking. He can speak, say, English or Mandarin. Therefore, my dog can talk. And it's just, it flows logically. It flows logically, but it doesn't match realistically. Obviously, dogs don't speak languages. So that's what I mean by coherence theory of truth. So if we have these things bandied about in society that, the garbage nonsense that men can become women or get pregnant or have any of the female attributes that only women can have, it's not corresponding to reality. It might internally cohere from their illogic, from their flawed perception of reality, but it's not realistic. It's not true, period. And everything else that attends to the sodomite club, the sexual perversion club, I don't give them their alphabet name. I don't care about them enough. But in any event, things like this, and also here in the West, everything is racist. I used to live in parts of the world where there is real racism that exists in these parts. People are excluded. in a very profound way. Racism does exist in many parts of the world, exclusion toward different ethnic groups. But here in America, you'd be hard-pressed to find such things on a public scale. It doesn't exist. Privately, who cares what a person thinks privately regarding that issue? It doesn't inform public policy in many, many respects. But we still live in we're in this country now where racism is the major topic of discussion constantly amongst, the leftist yuppie peoples, these people that are so high-minded and liberal. These people never traveled anywhere around the world. I can honestly say that. They have not. Because I've been to places where true racism exists, and they don't really think much of it because that's just the way life is. There is this kind of exclusionary approach to there. And Americans, they act like they're high-minded, and they want to save everybody, save the world, when they can't even save themselves. I don't understand this concept. Save the world, but they can't save themselves. The fact of the matter is, once a society starts to undo what chained it to critical thought and the procedures that followed that, say from the Enlightenment period, which we have done, we're now anchored to nothing. We're adrift at sea. And that's when chaos happens. Every society that has become destabilized and eventually collapsed was because they were anchored to nothing. And we don't have any kind of mooring whatsoever. And people seem to just be A-okay with it. I look back to the COVIDiot crisis, a disease that killed less than 0.5% of the population of any given place on Earth. And people were going out of their minds over this, taking such precautions that were beyond stupid, beyond unnecessary. And this was just within the last 5 to 6 years. Critical thought had been dying a slow death for many years following, or to the lead up of the COVIDiot time. But now it's to the point where you cannot truly have conversations with other human beings in the West. Now I know you'll differ with me, and that's fine. You can differ all you want. I've met countless numbers of people from all over the world. And I can tell you, most assuredly, I can have diligent, good, faithful conversations with people from parts of Europe, well, some parts of Europe, mostly Central and Eastern Europe and Northern Europe. Western Europe is as much a mess as the United States. And I have conversations with people all over the Asian continent, from East to Southeast to South Asia to West Asia. And so, but to try and have conversations with people who are generally classified under the umbrella West, in the Western Hemisphere, with mostly respect to the US and Canada. And in Western Europe, it's almost near impossible, to the point where I've had to resort to going online to spread a message, because I'd like for people that truly have critical thinking skills to listen to my voice, to apply such things, and to examine things for yourself. Because those people don't seem to exist in the West. They do, but they're not in any way the majority anymore. And so in conclusion, and in later videos, subsequent videos, I'll talk about true critical thinking and how to apply it and what it looks like. But right now I'm just laying kind of a foundation, a baseline for why I think and believe the way I do. And who am I? I'm nobody. I'm not important. You can listen or not. I don't particularly, it doesn't matter to me. I have copious amounts of writings that I've been writing for over 30 years about these very topics. But I wrote once about this, about how, is the West worth saving? And I don't think it is. There was a time in my life where I would have said, yes, it certainly is worth saving. The Western values, Western republicanism, self-government, freedoms, the liberties that were granted by government. Sure, they were. But if you live in the West, or even if you've visited the West, and you look around at the people, you can see very clearly it's not worth saving. This is a society. This is a society that is decadent, that is vastly deteriorated, that is as degenerate as any time in history, you could say, if not more, of course, because of the more people doing it and the greater means to perform such things. So, in my view, is it worth saving? Absolutely not. I don't care about the constitutional order. Yes, this government that was crafted 250 years ago at the time colonial America was the greatest government ever constructed in terms of its freedoms, its rights, its liberties, and everything that attended to that. But we are miles and miles, if not from here to the moon, distance from that time in terms of the thinking and the people and the character and the attitude of that versus now. So the question I would have for anybody is, would you want to preserve a society of spoiled brats and lunatics? I don't want to. There are other societies all across this earth that are certainly worth keeping and preserving and maintaining than the garbage status quo that is Americana. So anyway, and I can say all this, I'm an American, and even a foreigner can say this in my country, I don't care. We need to have open dialogue. This is the problem with today's postmodern thinking, is modern dialogue is offensive and for the in large part dead. But I'll have it until the day I die. I don't care what anybody says. Anyway, that's all for today. Take care.